So, the day has come, and finally I can talk about what happened when I played Dying Light 2 for 4 whole hours. The awesome Techland were kind enough to invite me to an online preview event where I was given the chance to actually play Dying Light 2. And in this video I'm going to be showing you some new gameplay footage of some of the quests through day and night, including combat, parkour and paragliding. I'll also be taking a look at things like the in-game HUD and some cool weapon mods. I must point out though that my session was held online and I was unable to record any of my own gameplay footage, as it wouldn't have represented the full quality of the final game. So this footage was provided by Techland, but it's of most of the missions that I played through on my day, and I've done an edit to best describe my own experience and to show you as much as I'm allowed to. Now, I've divided the video into chapters in the description if you want to jump to any particular section at any time though. So how did I play Dying Light 2 online? Well, first of all, Techland sent me a link to join a new Dying Light 2 Discord server. Then I had to download an app called Parsec. Then, when the day came, I was sent a link that would connect me remotely to the Techland server at 2:30 in the afternoon, and after an introduction from the PR team on the Discord, we pretty much got straight into playing it. We had 2 areas to explore, but were advised to start in Old Villedor. We were welcome to explore for as long as we wanted, but we were told that sticking to the main story missions would just about give us time to move into the second area called the Central Loop. After selecting Old Villedor, the demo seemed to be auto-skipping the cutscenes, many of which we've seen in the Dying to Know videos though. My gameplay started in the survivors camp, but I can't be sure how early on in the story this would be. It might be right at the start, but I can't confirm that. The central building in this camp was the Bazaar, which is basically a vast cathedral, and my first thoughts were clearly not everyone lives on the rooftops here. After having a good look around, I followed my objective marker to a little hut outside and received my first story quest called Unruly Brother. You basically had to find a guy called Barney and bring him back to his sister Sophie. And I was eager to crack on, so I just left the camp. Okay, let's pause it right there and first take a closer look at the new in-game HUD. It seems that the minimap from the original game is now gone, and we have a kind of compass with the objective marker in the top middle of the screen. And there in the top left corner you can see Aiden's health bar. Quest info can be flashed up by holding the view button on Xbox. It was tab on PC, but I'm not sure what that's going to be on the PlayStation. In the bottom left hand corner you can see your equipped items, and you can cycle through weapons by pressing the right D-pad button, up for consumables and health, and left for throwables and other equipment like UV lights. The bottom button simply toggles the flashlight on or off. And there in the bottom right of the screen you can see that the area you just entered is shown and which faction runs it. And interestingly, next to the clock is a kind of countdown to night time. So it's basically going to warn you when night is approaching, and it will flick from a sun to a moon. You can also see there's a side mission above it which appears to be locked at this stage of the game. Another new addition is that of a visible health and stamina bar above the enemies. Now I'm not sure how I feel about this one, to be honest, so let me know in the comments what you think about it. Now, as my helpful zombie assistant is pointing out, you can see an XP indicator for combat shown in the top right after a hit. Also, after running and jumping around the environment, you'll see parkour XP flash up too. Unfortunately, I can't talk about the skill trees at this point, as the build we played is not representative of the final game, and it may change before launch. The last thing I want to show you before we get into some of the quests is collecting resources and consumables. The most important ones for my playthrough were honey and chamomile, which you're going to need to craft health packs. But equally important were the UV shrooms, which are kind of the new fluorescent shrooms. They're easier to find at night as they do glow in the dark, and they'll boost your immunity when you're away from UV zones, but you can also loot GRE crates for boosters as well. Also, you may have noticed that the old gropey swipey animation from the original game has made a comeback. It does look a bit silly, but it's pretty funny too. Back to the quest, and I was just about to enter the dark area to find Barney when some guy stopped me to tell me they'd been attacked and needed help to restore power to their camp. You are given the choice here as to whether you want to help or not, but of course I wanted to check it out, so I said yes. Now in my playthrough I did this during the day, and you can see quite clearly here that it's night time in this footage, so it's a little bit different because during the day you're not under quite so much pressure. To restore the power, you've got to climb to the top of the windmill, and it's not as straightforward as it sounds. Firstly, hanging from ledges will drain your stamina, so the longer you take to work out where you've got to go next, the more likely it is you're going to fall. Also during the night, you'll see a biomarker timer at the top of the screen that's going to warn you when you've been away from UV light for too long. The time shown on this footage is much higher than the character I had in my playthrough though, because in less than 2 minutes my biomarker was kicking off, and this character must have a much higher immunity level, because I was boshing shrooms every 2 minutes. The climb involves jumping to moving parts, so you're going to lose stamina while you're waiting for them to come back into reach. You also use a big chunk of stamina when you jump. But to be honest, if you're familiar with the original game, then this climb isn't going to be too much of a challenge for you. Once you get to the top, just throw the switch and you'll get this animation of the camp coming back to life. Then all you've got to do is just jump down onto the mattress to break your fall. You can see there that you've now unlocked a safe zone and can use it as a UV spot, and also Aiden's stash is here, which means you can sleep through the night until morning, and the sleeping bag and stash bag are very similar to the setup of the original game. One last thing is the addition of a campfire. Now I hadn't noticed this on my playthrough, but the footage here seems to suggest that sitting around it will fast forward you to night. You can see the indicator now has an image of the sun setting before it turns to a moon, and I'm just going to let you listen to the onset of the night without commentary now, so you can get a sense of the coming dread.
With the easiest marks. We'd pick a house with a yellow ribbon. I'd be on crutches. Anders oozing charm, saying we fought with their dead husbands. PK, what happened to your husbands? It worked every time.
Okay, so you saw the howler there sounding the alarm, and that has triggered a level 1 chase. The more noise you make seems to ramp up the chase level, and then blink and you miss it, the Banshee leaping onto the scene hilariously using zombies as stepping stones. And not only is she really quick, but she seems to be able to jump really high too. There's actually 2 Banshees in this shot. Also, you'll see a red ring appears in the middle of the screen during a chase, indicating where the enemies are coming from. But it seems that the best thing to do in this scenario is just to head back to the rooftops and to the safety of UV light. Of course, the safest way to play at night is by stealth, and that's exactly how you have to approach the area where Barney is holed up. Upon entering, you'll see the quest info update to remind you what to do. The zombies in here are all sleeping, so approaching them from behind and taking them out quietly is the best option, as if you outright attack them, then they'll all spring to life and come for you. Also, Survivor Sense is back, and after finding Barney, you have to use it to follow the trail of blood and footprints to find Birdie. Another quest called Blue Guys saw me come face to face with a goon for the first time. Again though, my playthrough of this mission was at night time, and there were a ton of zombies coming after me too, so I just ran around searching until I found what I needed and got the hell out of there. I did not try to fight this guy. This footage looks cool, but I doubt my early character would have been able to deal with him because, yeah, he's a big guy. So the next quest was called Chink in the Armour, and I had to find Jack and Joe. Now you would recognise these guys from pretty much every Dying Light 2 trailer going back to the E3 demo. They've taken over the water tower and are threatening to blow it up, but before going straight there, part of the quest was to liberate Jack and Joe's camp. So here we can look at a new feature. By holding down the left D-pad button to bring up the wheel, you can see that holding down the right analog stick will now select binoculars. They can be used to find entry points and plan your attack, as the gang leader and his lieutenants are all highlighted when looking through them. Once you're in, you can try the stealth option of course, but it doesn't take much to alert the camp to your presence, and I had them all coming after me after my first kill. You can drop kick the enemies into the spikes as you could in the first game, and also there's gas canisters to throw to save on stamina. You might want to save the gas canisters for the gang leader though, as he's got the highest health and stamina. Once you've killed everybody, you have to claim the totem to liberate the camp. However, you are warned to loot the camp before doing this, as all of the loot disappears once you've done it. When you finally catch up with Jack and Joe, you've got to gain entry to the water tower by picking the lock on the front door. Now this mechanic is essentially unchanged from the original game, apart from cosmetically. Some are going to be happy about that and some won't like it, but it works well enough for me. Once inside, you have to find and disarm the explosives. The first one is at ground level, but after that it's a case of navigating your way upwards to locate the others. The climbing is very similar to the original game, and even the visibly breakable window boards are the same. But it does get a bit trickier though when you have to jump onto swinging objects. When you find Jack and Joe at the top, you have to choose between helping them or fighting them, and after liberating the tower, you can choose which faction to assign them to. In my mind, I was doing this mission for the survivors, so it was a no-brainer really. So let's break things up now by having a look at some modded weapons in the game. If I freeze it right there, you can see this weapon has got an electrical effect added. But, unlike the first game, this modded Last Hope can actually blast electricity towards the enemies. The little symbols there go dark for a moment afterwards, so there's got to be a recharge period between shots, and of course actually hitting the enemies will also create a chain effect, much like the original did. This fire modded machete looks pretty awesome, and the effect seems constant, so it's much quicker to do the damage by the looks of it. And then there's this crazy looking axe with a kind of cryogenic mod for a freeze effect. And if I just freeze it there, you can get a good look at this one, and it looks fantastic. Unfortunately, I'm not actually going to be able to show you how to upgrade these weapons, as the inventory is off limits even after the embargo. So that means, the map, the skill trees, everything, not allowed to talk about it. So although I've seen it, apparently it won't represent the way the game will look once it's completed. So for that reason, we cannot show you what we saw on our event days. So the only place I hadn't explored in my playthrough was the metro station, and if I'm honest, I pretty much ended it before I got there, as I was running out of time to check out the central loop area. Despite not being able to show you the map though, I think it's safe for me to say that these two main areas are separated a bit like the slums and Old Town were in the original game. Now, as I said, I didn't really explore the metro station, but I'll go out on a limb here and say that the subway may connect the two areas much like the sewers did before. And as I can't confirm that, it's purely a guess on my part, but it would make sense. Getting to the central loop in the demo though was pretty easy, as all I had to do was quit to the main menu and select it from there. The central loop then is basically the big city with skyscrapers and apartment blocks everywhere. This place is where you can really have fun with your parkour skills, because it's essentially a big playground in itself, and that's not even including all of the things that there are to do there. But the main event in Central Loop Demo was meeting LeOne for the first time, and that's because she was about to show me something very cool. And that was the paraglider. She basically runs you through a tutorial on how to use it, and after leaping from a tall building, you just hold X on the Xbox controller to release the chute. I'm guessing it'll be square on the PlayStation controller though. But of course there's more to it than that, and you need to pull back on the left analog stick to stabilise the chute and make small adjustments left or right to steer it where you want to go. The city is covered with these air vents, and aiming for one of those will give you extra lift. Once you've hit one, you can fly a lot further than you would without it, because otherwise you'd gradually descend to the ground level, unless you land on a rooftop or a ledge of course. Now, once the tutorial's over, the first quest in the central loop is to find the electrical substation and turn on the power. The problem is that once you've found it, there's no ground level access, and the only things to climb onto were too high up to reach. As you can see in this footage, you could climb onto the surrounding buildings and try and paraglide over to the ledge or the pipes. But in my playthrough, I found that there was an air vent on the floor outside, and if you stood over it, then jumped up and deployed the paraglider, it gave you just enough lift to get there without having to scale a tower block. Inside this building is actually the cable pulling puzzle that we saw in Dying to Know episode 4. It's a really cool idea, and hopefully there's more like this throughout the game. Again, you're given the choice who to assign it to afterwards, and you get another animation showing this abandoned structure coming back to life. In this instance, it's the Peacekeepers. Personally, I did choose the Peacekeepers, as they kind of helped me with some renegades outside the substation, so I felt that I pretty much owed it to them. Right, unfortunately that's all I can show you from the footage that I have. The last quest before I ran out of time was to protect the fisheye from a renegade attack on the rooftops, and you had to paraglide from one building to another to disarm their rockets. That was really cool. There were lots of other things that I'd hoped to bring you, like chemical areas that essentially involved playing the floor is lava to get across it, and there was even some playable dream sequences while Aiden was sleeping. And also, I talked to this guy from the trailer whose name is Albert, and he has a son called Vincenzo. But But alas, I don't have any recordings of those cool moments to share with you, I'm afraid. Still, I hope you like what you saw here, and once again, a big thank you to Techland for making it possible, and to Sherry for inviting me in the first place. So if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.